So before Epic featured Backrooms Escape, a typical day was about 93 players a day. 93. While it was in Epic Picks, it jumped up to more than 140,000. And then once it rotated out, it was still pushing over 21,000 players a day. That is about 230 times than when it started. How's it going, everyone? It's Joel from FN Analytica, and today I'm going to do a bit of a Discover deep dive on the Epic Picks row. And is it actually worth it? Does it work better than the genre rows? And what actually happens during it as well as after it? So we've tracked every island that has hit that Epic Picks over the last 93 days. And now I'm going to break down what those 60 islands have told us. So in this video, we're covering 5 things. What the row actually is, what a pick is really worth, who's getting picked, why some islands keep that audience and most don't, and what you can actually do about it. So if you don't know what Epic Picks is, it's basically a curated row somewhere near the top of the Discover page, and you can't buy your way into it. You have to be selected by Epic to be able to be shown in there. So since about mid-July, it's sort of gotten into a rhythm. So 4 islands at a time, usually starts on a Wednesday, and they roughly do the campaign for about a week. And across the row's 93 days that we've tracked, only 60 islands have made it in there, and not one of them has appeared twice. For a sense of how tight that actually is, look at the new row. Same comparison window, more than 25,000 islands went through it, and a typical island was visible for under an hour. Epic's Picks is a completely different kind of door. So what actually happens when you get picked? So we took 36 of the first 40 islands, the ones with enough history before the feature, and measured every day against that island's own normal week. The first thing that is worth noticing is that the week before the pick is flat. These islands weren't already taking off or trending. Epic isn't just jumping on something that is already moving. Then day 0, the day they land in the Epic Picks row, about 37 times the normal. It keeps climbing to a peak on day 4, about 89 times their normal rate. By day 8, it's still around 24 times. And 3 weeks in, it's about 3 times normal, with 35 islands lasting far enough to measure that. But the spread is huge. At that day 4 peak, the middle half ranged from anywhere from 9 times to 300 times. So a pick is a big deal, but it's just not a big deal for everyone. So the spotlight rents you an audience for about a week, but retention decides if you keep that. Now, how does that spot actually compare to the best spot that you can actually earn on your own? In our study, 87 small islands fought their way into the top 6 of a genre row and never got picked. Their typical lift in that genre row was about 1.9 times normal. The 22 small islands that did get picked were about 163 times. Line those up and you get roughly 86 to 1. Now hold on to that number, because I'm not saying that the Epic Picks is actually the cause of that. Epic chooses who gets picked. So they choose who they already back. And 95% of those islands that did get picked were showing up in a Discover row anyway. So 163 times is everything bundled up, not just that row by itself. One more thing worth knowing, that gap is a small island story. For a mid-sized island, it's about 5.5 times versus 1.5. For established islands, 1.1 versus 1. The bigger you already are, the less any of this moves you. So who's actually getting picked? Mostly smaller islands than you think. In the first 40, 26 were under 1,000 daily players or had no audience we could even measure. In the newest 20, 12 were under 1,000 before their feature, 3 in 5. And you don't need a long track record either. Bite or Die turned up in our daily data and then was on the Epic Picks 5 days later. And across those 5 days before it got into Epic Picks, it was roughly getting just over 1,000 players a day. So getting picked early clearly happens. There's nothing in the data that says why. It's all up to Epic and them taking a punt on these smaller islands that they deem have potential. And there's 2 patterns across all of the 60. No island has ever been in the row twice, and every single one is recorded as built-in UEFN. We've never seen a creative 1.0 island in there. So Epic isn't promoting the islands you already see, they're promoting the islands you haven't. Okay, so here's the part that you can actually do something about. Making those players come back. Okay, so quick definition. Day 1 retention is the share of new players that return the next day. Day 7 retention are the players that return 1 week later. And keep rate for this next bit means how much of your feature week audience came back after you were out of that row. Across the first 40 picks, Day 1 barely moves. 14.4% before, 12 during, 14.3 after. Day 7 tells the real story. 5.5% before, 6 during, then 2 after. A lot of the people a spotlight brings you turn up once and never come back. Now the split matters. 8 recent islands had complete data. The 4 holding Day 1 retention at 15% or better during the feature kept about 46% of their feature week audience. The other 4 kept about 3%. That's roughly 15 times the difference. 8 islands is not the law. And retention wasn't the only thing that was separating them, but it is something that you can control. Now, 2 islands, same row, same week. Backrooms roguelike, 5,868 players on a typical day before, 205,239 during, and still 139,786 afterwards. It kept about 68% of its feature audience. Its Day 1 retention was already 28% before Epic ever picked it. The feature didn't make that island good. It just showed a lot of people something that already was. Then Laufey, the final hour, a Sony-backed island, 334 a day, up to 7,339 during, back down to 764 after. About a 10% kept, with a Day 1 retention at 5.8% during the feature. A recognizable name did not save it. Now let's talk genres. These groups are small, so take it as clues and not actual rules. Simulation and Tycoon is the biggest group. 13 of the first 40. It's also one of the flattest. A typical Tycoon hits 17 times normal during the feature and sat at 2.6 times afterwards. Horror is the opposite end. Only 4 horror islands in the first 40, but they were starting from 19 players a day, and their typical lift was around 1,460 times normal. There's a title trend too. 7 of the 60 picks carry brain rot branding. 4 of those in the newest 20. And Roguelike had strong numbers after the feature as a group. Again, 4 islands, worth watching, not a forecast. Okay, so what can creators take from this? Before the checklist, let's have a look at 3 numbers side by side. And they're 3 separate measurements, not steps of the journey. Before their pick, 14 of the first 40 had reached a genre row top 10 at some point. During the feature, 22 were in a genre row top 6. And after, 25 of the 36 with enough history showed up in a genre row top 10 again. So what do you actually do with all of this? 5 things. 1, building UEFN. All of these islands that have been featured are in UEFN. 2, you don't need a big audience. Most of these games were small before they hit. 3, treat genres as clues. see which ones are actually working and being exposed to these rows. You know, it's not a confirmed of what epic will choose next, but you can use it as an informative decision. 4, fix retention before, not after the audience arrives. In this study, the higher retention groups kept more than 40% of their audience. The lower retention group, only 3. 5, plan for your rotation week. The audience drops off sharply once you're out. So make sure you have your retention, onboarding, or a new update or live event ready to go for when you're about to leave. Okay, quick reality check before we wrap up, because you should know what these numbers aren't. 60 islands, 93 days. When I say a typical result, I mean the middle island of the group, not the promise of what you will get. And the 163 versus the 1.9 doesn't prove that the road caused the gap. Epic picked those islands, and most of them were already hitting a genre row when they got picked. We also left the newest picks out of the After Effects because their windows weren't completely finished. Righto, I'm done. Cheers for that, guys. And if you found this informative or interesting, or you have further questions, hit me up. I'll chuck my Twitter if you don't have it yet. Send me a message. Ask these questions. I love this. I actually want to give a shout out to Johnny Blueprint for sort of giving me this idea. He actually messaged me, and then that got me excited and wanted to run through and sort of dig a bit deeper into this. So appreciate that, mate. But anyway, until then, I'll catch you on the next time.